As morning settles into the quiet of your inner space, allow the breath to widen, feeling the subtle expansion that precedes a thought and holds the possibility of change. Notice how a single, calm inhalation reaches into the center of the chest and then into the subtle field that surrounds the body, as if drawing a soft thread of light through a crystalline lattice. Feel the attention become a conductor, tuning the field of awareness to a frequency that is open, receptive, and aligned with deeper intention. This is the beginning of a new programming cycle for your subconscious. With each exhale, imagine release as a quieting of old static, a gentle clearing of busy, habitual currents that cloud the clarity of purpose and creative intention. Let the breath act like a metronome that balances your nervous system and signals to the subconscious that the space is ready for meaningful input. This morning pause is not empty time. It is the foundational moment when the subtle mind listens most clearly and begins to accept the languages of feeling and image. Allow the stillness that follows this breath to become the canvas upon which new sentences of being can be written, soft enough to receive and strong enough to hold. Feel the interior tuning as a warm hum that extends through the spine and into the tissue of perception, bringing coherence to scattered attention and aligning inner rhythms with a calm clarity. You are invited to visualize a gentle instrument, an invisible tuner that leans into resonance with intention, shifting the subtle membrane of belief toward openness and receptivity. Allow imagery to be simple. A luminous orb at the heart that widens by degrees, casting a gentle glow across the corridors of memory and habit, softening the edges of old stories until they become malleable. As this inner light expands, recognize how the subconscious naturally responds to repeated, clear impulses. What is felt and rehearsed in feeling becomes the architecture of habitual living. Hold the intention that this moment is a tuning session, not a performance, and that small, consistent shifts create deep structural change over time. Let the awareness of tuning settle like dew across the mind, carrying the sense that a different pattern is accessible and ready to be rehearsed. From this tuned place, the next steps of scripting and re-encoding will move with greater ease and precision, as if the entire inner instrument is now ready to be played. Invite a single intention into the field of attention, clear and concise, like a small beacon that will guide the micro-actions of the day. This is not a wish, but a gentle directive for the subconscious to begin a new rehearsal. Keep the intention focused and present tense, expressed in simple sensory terms that the deeper mind comprehends without argument, for the subconscious responds most readily to felt experience rather than abstract demand. Picture the intention as a thread of gold that connects from the chest to the horizon, unbroken and luminous, carrying the frequency of what is sought, whether abundance, health, or confidence, into the receptive architecture of the inner being. Stay with the sensory quality of this intention for several breaths, noticing any shifts in temperature, weight, or tone within the body that naturalize the new message. Allow any inner skepticism to be acknowledged without debate, observing it like a weather pattern that moves across the sky and does not determine the climate of the field. Rest in the quiet conviction that small, clear intentions, repeated with feeling and brevity, are the seeds from which profound transformation grows. From this grounded place of intention, the mind will begin to craft the words and images that will become your daily scripts. Anchor the chosen intention with a gentle sensation. Perhaps the warmth in the chest, the steadiness at the base of the spine, or the lightness behind the eyes, so the subconscious receives not only meaning but bodily reference. Sensory anchors are the bridges that translate abstract intention into embodied habit, providing the deep mind with reliable signals to recognize and respond to. As this anchor is felt, imagine it expanding subtly outward, creating a radial field of resonance that informs posture, voice, and movement throughout the day in small, adaptive ways. Notice how the body begins to align around the anchor, adjusting micro-tensions and opening pathways for the new pattern to integrate. Trust that this kind of somatic cue communicates more reliably with the subconscious than verbal argument or forceful willpower ever could. Keep the anchor simple and repeatable, something that can be recalled in a single breath or touch and that will serve as a quick reset whenever old patterns arise. With this anchoring complete, the internal field has both intention and somatic reference ready for precise scripting that the subconscious can accept and act upon. Recognize this morning sequence as an invitation to rehearse preferred states rather than a demand to instantly become something different, for the subconscious responds with greater fidelity to practice than to pressure. Invite curiosity into the process, allowing questions like, "How would this feel if it were already true?" to open landscapes of sensory detail where the new patterns can be tested and refined. Visualize brief scenes that embody the intention, small, believable moments where abundance, health, or confidence are lived in micro-acts, and feel the physiological correlates of those moments to give them weight. Commit to a 5-minute rehearsal each morning that is consistent, brief, and emotionally clear. Consistency is the scaffolding that supports long-term change as much as intensity is not. Let the rehearsal be joyful and light, a sacred morning appointment where the field is reshaped, one clear, felt sentence at a time. When the rehearsal completes, carry the subtle residue of alignment into the day, allowing actions to follow from this newly tuned field rather than from hurried reaction. The habit of daily rehearsal is the foundation of lasting reprogramming and the simplest formative act that can be performed on behalf of the life to be lived. Begin by allowing awareness to notice where tension, doubt, or hesitation live inside the body and mind, bringing gentle attention without judgment to the places of static that interfere with clarity. Stand as a witness to these sensations, using breath to soften the judgmental voice and to invite a kinder, curious inquiry into the origin and texture of resistance. Recognize that resistance often manifests as protective habits, old logic loops, rehearsed fears, or physical tightness that once served survival but now limit expansion. Observe how the energy of resistance feels. Is it heavy, sticky, brittle, or contracted? And where is it held most persistently within the body? Allow the noticing itself to be a small act of compassion, for simply mapping the landscape of resistance reduces its charge and makes it more navigable. As awareness settles into this observation, a quiet space opens where alternative patterns can begin to emerge without confrontation. From this clear witness point, the process of dissolving resistance becomes a practiced art rather than a battle of will. Invite the parts of the subconscious that guard or protect to speak without condemnation, allowing each fear or limiting belief to be acknowledged as a messenger rather than an enemy. Ask simple, open-ended questions in the mind. What is your concern? What were you protecting me from? And then listen for the subtle impressions that arise, whether images, words, or sensations. When a limiting narrative appears, treat it as data rather than truth. Examine its time frame, its origin, and its current relevance to the life you are choosing to create. Offer gratitude to these protective voices for the role they played, then gently inform them that a new strategy is being adopted, one that values expansion and safety simultaneously. This dialogical approach transforms internal conflict into negotiated integration, allowing the subconscious to update its protocols in cooperation rather than resistance. As the protective voices are heard and reoriented, Energy that was previously tied up in vigilance becomes available for creativity, action, and calm manifestation. Use a small, simple ritual to mark the release of old patterns. A measured exhale, a symbolic letting go in imagination, or a brief movement that says to the nervous system that the past no longer dictates the present. Rituals do not need ornate props. They are effective because they create clear boundaries and signal transitions to the subconscious mind, which loves pattern and meaning. Choose a sensory-rich action that the body can remember. A sweeping breath, the visualization of a river carrying away cobwebbed stories, or the felt sensation of a soft hand unclenching muscle memory. Repeat this ritual for several breaths, allowing each cycle to diminish the charge around the limiting pattern and create a new neuro-associative space for possibility. Notice how the posture shifts, how the shoulders drop, and how the tone of inner language softens as the ritual registers in the body. Over time, these small ceremonies become reliable triggers for letting go, structurally rewiring responses to trigger points that previously activated resistance. Once the charge around old beliefs is softened, begin to rewrite the internal rulebook with simple, clarifying phrases that the subconscious can accept and rehearse, phrasing them in the present tense and sensory language. Replace broad, abstract vows with short, believable sentences that feel reachable in the body and are thus more likely to be integrated as habit phrases like abundance flows in measured, predictable ways, or strength is present in warmth and rhythm. Repeat these new rules with feeling during the 5-minute rehearsal, anchoring them with the bodily cue chosen earlier so that they are encoded with both meaning and sensation. Notice the ease or resistance that arises during repetition and adjust phrasing to maintain believability while still stretching the boundary of the current identity. Encourage curiosity about the practical steps that align with these new rules, understanding that belief and behavior inform each other in a reciprocal loop. The aim is not instant transformation, but a gradual rewriting of the inner operating system so that actions naturally reflect the new rules without force. Commit to small daily practices that sustain the momentum of clearing micro-pauses, brief rituals, and immediate tiny acts that reinforce the new rules and keep the system moving toward ease. Recognize that consistency is the signal the subconscious requires to reorganize priorities and consolidate new neural pathways, far more effective than large, erratic surges of discipline. When old patterns reappear, respond with the same compassionate curiosity used at the outset. Map, ritualize, and rescribe so that resistance is gradually demoted from director to messenger. Track subtle evidence of shift throughout the day, noting small changes in decision-making, energy distribution, or emotional tone as metrics of progress instead of waiting for dramatic signs. This slow, cumulative process of clearing and rebuilding lays the groundwork for sustainable transformation, where the subconscious learns new habits through repeated, felt experience. Over time, the field of your inner world becomes less cluttered and more luminous, inviting deeper manifestations that were previously blocked by accumulated resistance. Understand that language shapes not only thought but the felt architecture of experience, and that the subconscious accepts the rhythms of phrase and image as instructions for living. Choose words that feel crisp in the body, avoiding ambiguous qualifiers and future conditional phrasing that the deeper mind interprets as mere hope rather than instruction. Favor present tense statements that embed sensory consequence, such as feeling, sight, or motion, because the subconscious is most responsive to descriptions that it can simulate as if they are happening now. Keep scripts concise, Brevity increases memorability and reduces cognitive resistance, making the sentences repeatable in everyday moments when reinforcement matters most. Use verbs that convey motion and momentum rather than static assertions, since movement implies unfolding and reciprocity with the field. When crafting language, imagine it as a chord struck in the inner instrument. The clearer and purer the tone, the more resonant the response. This conscious shaping of words is the core skill of effective subconscious scripting. Balance clarity with specificity. Choose simple sentences that still point to concrete sensory outcomes, for the subconscious prefers vivid, compact directions over abstract generalities. Instead of saying, "I am abundant someday," favor something like, "Money arrives with ease for necessary choices," which ties abundance to real, small experiences that can be noticed and reinforced. Specify feelings and behaviors alongside outcomes, describing how abundance looks or how confidence feels in small, believable scenes, because these afford the mind a rehearsal script rather than a vague aspiration. Keep each script focused on a single thread, abundance, health, or confidence, so the neural pathways can strengthen without interference from mixed messages. Trim excess modifiers that dilute the force of the sentence, choosing potency over poetic excess in these short daily refrains. When language is both simple and sensory, the subconscious finds comfortable acceptance and begins to weave the phrase into habitual pathways. Over time, these concise, specific lines become the scaffolding for larger systemic shifts in identity and behavior. Anchor each sentence with an embodied cue so that the words are encoded not only as conceptual truth, but as felt experience that the nervous system recognizes. After speaking or silently rehearsing a phrase, allow the body to notice the micro changes in posture, breathing, or tone that accompany the imagined scene, and then anchor those shifts with a gentle touch or the chosen breath. This somatic coupling converts the script from ephemeral language into a reliable recall system. The cue triggers the feeling, which triggers the belief, which then guides action. Practice the coupling for several repetitions to form a robust association that the subconscious can draw upon automatically when similar cues arise throughout the day. Remember that the body is the primary recorder of experience, and aligning words with sensation ensures that the subconscious receives a complete message. Over time, the phrase alone will elicit the embodied state, and the internal script will no longer feel separate from lived reality. Design each 5-minute script with careful pacing. Start with breath, introduce 1 or 2 core lines, embody them, then close with a short integration breath. This rhythm supports consolidation and reduces overwhelm. Repeat core lines with gentle intention, allowing each repetition to sink deeper into the tissue of memory rather than speeding toward a finish. Rehearsing with feeling beats mechanical repetition every time. Aim for a cadence that matches the natural breath and heartbeat, keeping the mind attentive without forcing attention to strain itself into unnatural focus. Use morning consistency to build baseline momentum, then apply brief reinforcements during the day when cues appear, allowing the script to migrate from formal practice into lived action. Remember that the subconscious responds to pattern and predictability, so the daily ritual of pacing, repetition, and integration is the engine of gradual reprogramming. When repetition is mindful and sensorially anchored, transformation becomes a steady, reliable process rather than an aspirational idea. After creating a script, test it against the felt sense of believability, adjusting phrasing until it lands as plausible, yet slightly stretching, to encourage growth without triggering collapse. If a phrase feels impossible or provokes immediate pushback, soften it or break it into smaller steps that build confidence. The subconscious accepts incremental truth more readily than sudden leaps. Use sensory qualifiers and time anchors to keep things credible, such as naming small ways a new reality begins to show up within days or weeks, rather than insisting upon instant miracles. Maintain a posture of curiosity, noting subtle evidence that supports the new statement and altering the script as necessary to keep it congruent with lived experience. Over time, incrementally adjust the edges of the script outward, expanding the field of belief in manageable stages that the nervous system can follow. This iterative refinement is the craft of scripting, ensuring sustainable integration rather than fleeting aspiration. Begin by redefining abundance as a steady flow of resources and inner capacity rather than sporadic windfalls, seeing it as a reliable river that supports choices and well-being. Allow the image of an even, nourishing current to replace frantic scarcity narratives, noticing how the body relaxes when abundance is framed as consistent support. Speak the intention in present terms that emphasize access and ease, using language that points to tangible, daily experiences of provision rather than distant fantasies. Include feelings of sufficiency and ease in the script, so the subconscious learns to equate abundance with inner calm and resourceful decision-making. Recognize that abundance also encompasses time, attention, relationships, and health resources that replenish and amplify the capacity for more exchange. By widening the definition, the subconscious gets more entry points to practice and reinforce the new reality. When abundance is experienced as steady, the mind feels safe to receive and the body cooperates with practical actions that invite greater flow. Begin the 5-minute script with 3 deep, anchoring breaths, sensing ease in the chest and a steadying at the base of the spine to prepare the nervous system for receptive learning. Introduce one clear present tense line such as, "Money arrives with ease to support choice and well-being," and repeat it slowly 3 times while feeling the body's response to each iteration. Add a second short sensory line that illustrates the outcome. For example, "A measurable, comfortable flow sustains daily needs and creative projects," and pair this with the somatic anchor so the phrase is embodied. Spend the remaining time imagining a small, believable scene where this flow is active, receiving a thoughtful payment, choosing a nourishing meal, or funding a simple act of care with all senses engaged and the feeling of sufficiency present. Close with 2 grounding breaths, letting the image dissolve into a stable inner knowing that is held by the anchor. Repeat this script across mornings, allowing subtle evidence to accumulate and confirm the new pattern in life. Track small, objective evidence of abundance. Each day, tiny inflows, timely resources, small acts of support, and use these as data points to convince the subconscious that the new pattern works. Keep a simple list or mental ledger, noting 3 micro-evidences daily, like a surprise discount, a helpful call, or a small account increase, each time allowing the body to feel the confirmation. This practice creates a feedback loop. The subconscious takes notice of recurring evidence and strengthens the new script accordingly, which invites further aligned action in the external world. Avoid discounting minor signs as coincidences. Regard them instead as the first ripples of a broader change that is forming beneath the surface. Use each piece of evidence to gently expand the script toward larger, believable statements as confidence grows. Over time, the ledger becomes a living archive that supports revision, refinement, and trust in the abundance process. Identify and rewrite the deep storylines about money that influence choices. Narratives such as "money is scarce" or deserving is earned through struggle, and replace them with short, sensory statements that reflect sufficiency and ethical flow. Use narrative reframing techniques to narrate a new arc where resources move in support of the life being built, illustrating it with simple scenes like paying a bill with ease or funding a small creative project without anxiety. Notice the emotional tags that accompany old stories: shame, urgency, tightness, and deliberately counter them with safety cues and the somatic anchor, so the nervous system learns a different emotional reflex to financial signals. Allow compassion to move through the process, recognizing that old money stories often protected something important and deserve acknowledgement before being updated. As the storylines shift, decision-making becomes less reactive and more aligned with broader values and possibilities. This internal re-narration frees energy to be used for creation rather than protection. Scale the script gradually as evidence accrues, nudging statements outward while honoring the nervous system's need for credible steps rather than sudden leaps in identity. As micro-evidence becomes consistent, broaden the language to include larger allowances still, sensory and present tense, so the subconscious adjusts to the sense of increased possibility without panic. Maintain the anchoring and the ritualized pace that supported the original script, adapting only the content to reflect expanded capacity and invitation. Use the morning 5-minute practice to mark each stage of scaling, incorporating the evidence ledger as a mirror of progress so the subconscious can trust growth. Remember that sustainable expansion is a process of repeated, believable reassignments of meaning rather than a single dramatic rewrite. When scaling is practiced with careful integrity, abundance becomes a lived condition rather than a hoped-for future. Approach health as a dynamic, regenerative process rather than a binary state, understanding that the body is constantly seeking balance and will respond kindly to supportive signals from attention and habit. Frame health scripts to emphasize restoration and rhythm. Phrases that describe steady repair, calm immune cooperation, and efficient energy flow are more congruent with embodied healing than absolutes. Speak in present tense with sensory detail. For example, cells repair with precise calm efficiencies, or energy circulates gently and steadily through each day, so the subconscious has a rehearsal of how wellness feels. Include posture and breath cues that embody the language. Slow, abdominal breathing, soft shoulder release to make the message somatically credible. Use compassionate tone in the phrasing. The subconscious is more responsive to invitation than to punishment. As these scripts settle, the body receives clear directives about preferred physiological states and organizes resources accordingly. Incorporate micro-behaviors into the script that are immediate and trackable. Small hydration cues, brief movement breaks, consistent sleep anchors, so that the subconscious has specific actions to translate belief into embodiment. Pair each micro-behavior with a short phrase that describes the felt outcome, such as, "This water restores clarity and steady energy," reinforcing the association between behavior and vitality. Keep behaviors bite-sized and frequent. The body learns through repetition and immediate feedback loops, not through grand but sporadic gestures. Create simple triggers for these behaviors, placing a water bottle within reach, setting a 2-minute movement alarm, or maintaining a consistent wind-down ritual to reduce friction and increase reliability. Notice how consistent micro-behaviors accumulate into noticeable physiological shifts over weeks rather than days, and use those shifts as confirmation in the script. The union of micro-behavior and script forms a practical bridge between inner intention and measurable health outcomes. Begin with 2 grounding breaths, then speak a concise core line such as, Cells repair quietly and efficiently while energy flows with comfort. Repeating it 3 times while allowing the body to sense the implication of repair and circulation. Add a sensory vignette. Imagine warm, steady blood flow, relaxed musculature, or a clear mind guiding calm movement, and let the imagination fill in tactile details so the subconscious rehearses a believable physiological change. Include a short behavioral cue to anchor the practice into daily life, like sipping a glass of water or stretching the spine for 30 seconds upon waking, ensuring immediate integration. Close with 3 steady, slow exhales and a brief gratitude phrase that recognizes the body's natural tendency toward balance, creating a supportive, non-coercive framework for healing. Repeat the script across mornings, tracking small signs of increased energy, restful sleep, and ease in movement as evidence. Over time, the repeated practice creates a resilient baseline of vitality that the subconscious tends to maintain. When symptoms appear, treat them as communication rather than enemy forces, using brief curiosity to learn their message and then applying the script to support adaptive responses rather than suppression. Ask the body with a gentle inward voice what it needs in this moment: rest, nourishment, movement, or attention, and offer a small practical response that aligns with that need rather than defaulting to fear-driven avoidance. Reframe symptom work as cooperative maintenance. Supply the body with safe habits and calibration techniques that support longer-term repair without becoming preoccupied by every fluctuation. Use the 5-minute practice to send signals of safety and repair, and pair those signals with modest external actions, like adjusting hydration or reducing stimulation to match the message of the symptom. Over time, responsive care diminishes alarm, and the nervous system learns that symptoms are part of a regulated feedback system rather than existential threats. This cooperative stance transforms health management into an active partnership with the body. Build resilience by combining the daily script with lifestyle scaffolds that include oxygen-rich movement, restorative sleep patterns, and nourishing nutrition, all introduced in manageable, consistent steps. Celebrate small upgrades and track their ripple effects in mood, energy, and clarity as evidence that the system is reorganizing toward well-being. Maintain compassionate curiosity during setbacks, recognizing them as data points that refine the approach rather than as failures that require self-punishment. Use the anchor and ritual to reset and return to the script quickly when disruptions occur, ensuring the nervous system does not default into catastrophic narratives. Over time, the cumulative effect of steady, small practices and clear embodied scripts produces durable health improvements that feel natural rather than forced. The path to vitality is a responsive and patient craft, guided by consistent rehearsal and wise, incremental choices. Approach confidence as a learned posture of inner permission rather than an innate fixed trait, understanding that the subconscious builds identity through repeated micro-actions and habitual language. Recognize that confidence often falters under threat to identity, but it can be reconstructed through frequent, believable experiences of competence and acceptance woven into daily practice. Use scripts that describe not just outcomes, but the manner of doing, how speech sounds, how the body holds itself, and how the breath steadies, so the subconscious rehearses style along with result. Frame confidence in terms of functionality, the capacity to act, to speak, and to respond with steady attention rather than a demand for perfection. As micro-behaviors accumulate, identity shifts inch forward, and the body adapts to new patterns of conduct that look and feel like confidence in the world. The script's task is to supply the consistent rehearsal that scaffolds the identity upgrade from the inside out. Introduce micro-rehearsals that cultivate presence, short, intentional acts like steady eye, Soft focus for 30 seconds, slow exhalation before speaking, or a brief, upright posture check that anchor embodied poise. Pair each micro-rehearsal with a short phrase that describes the felt quality sought. For example, voice is steady and clear, or calm presence opens the way, and feel the bodily correlates as the phrase repeats. Over time, these small rehearsals create a baseline of accessible presence that the subconscious uses as shorthand in stressful moments instead of defaulting to avoidance or collapse. Make the rehearsals highly repeatable and context-sensitive so they can be used multiple times a day, building automaticity. Notice how consistent presence practice shifts the narrative from performance anxiety to applied competence as the body learns reliable cues for steadiness. This method reframes confidence as an accessible skill repertoire rather than an elusive personal trait. Begin with grounding breaths, then state one clear embodied line such as, "A calm, steady presence guides voice and action today," repeating it slowly while feeling the posture and breath align with the phrase. Add a brief vignette. Imagine initiating a small interaction with steady tone and clear eyes, noticing the felt ease that follows, so the subconscious rehearses the social muscle memory. Include a micro-action challenge to be practiced immediately upon completion, speaking a short greeting, making a small request, or holding eye contact for a beat to translate rehearsal into real-world rehearsal. Close, with a calming breath and a sensory acknowledgement of the small victory, reinforcing the idea that confidence grows through manageable, repeated acts. Repeat this practice each morning to access a steady baseline of presence, and then refresh it before moments that matter to enhance performance. The cumulative effect is an identity that tilts toward competence, because daily rehearsals redefine the parameters of what is considered normal behavior. When identity fractures arise from criticism or past failures, specifically address those scars with a compassionate, corrective script that acknowledges the past but reframes the present capacity for growth. Use phrases that integrate acceptance and possibility, such as "past attempts taught important lessons," and present actions build from that wisdom, allowing the subconscious to reconceive history as resource rather than indictment. Pair the script with gentle somatic cues to destabilize reactive shame responses and to create new bodily associations for self-worth. Include behavioral experiments that are small, safe, and confirmable to provide the subconscious with actual data contradicting the old negative identity script. Over repeated cycles, the inner story rewrites itself from one of static limitation to a narrative of evolving capabilities supported by evidence. This integrative approach repairs identity without denying the past, using it as a foundation for renewed, practical confidence. Cultivate social practices that both reinforce confidence and maintain healthy boundaries, learning to say small, firm no's and to accept help where it aligns with values, thereby training the subconscious to act from sovereignty rather than fear. Use scripts that describe the felt boundary. Calm presence holds a clear limit with kindness. So social interactions are rehearsed as agents of identity support rather than threats. Notice how consistent boundary practice reduces reactive anxiety and increases respect in relationships, serving as real-world evidence for the new internal script. Pair boundary work with gratitude for supportive connections, balancing assertiveness with relational warmth to avoid isolating or combative extremes. Over time, the environment adapts to the new signals of poise and clarity, making confident behavior easier and more sustainable. the social sphere becomes a proving ground where internal scripts are tested, refined, and ultimately validated. Establish a consistent structure for each morning practice to give the subconscious reliable cues, because repetition in timing and sequence reduces cognitive friction and increases acceptance of new scripts. Begin with a short centering ritual, breath, and posture to signal the transition from sleep state randomness into intentional rehearsal, creating predictability that the deeper mind can rely upon. Keep the session to 5 minutes to ensure high adherence and to avoid the mind convincing itself that practice is burdensome. Brevity with consistency is the most potent long-term strategy. Organize the ritual into 3 parts: grounding, scripting, and integration, so each session moves from calibration to encoding to closure. Use the same somatic anchor each day to create a powerful associative loop between cue and embodied state, enabling quick recalls throughout varied daily contexts. Over time, the ritual itself becomes a trusted structure that the subconscious recognizes as the time for programming and alignment. Begin grounding with 3 slow, full breaths, feeling the inhale fill lower lungs and the exhale release tension from the shoulders and jaw, letting the nervous system settle into regulated rhythm. As the breath deepens, bring attention to the anchor, the warmth, lightness, or steadiness chosen earlier, so the body knows where to land when the scripts begin. Use a brief body scan to locate and soften areas of tension, allowing the field to become a receptive canvas rather than a defensive fortress. Notice subtle changes in temperature, texture, or rhythm within the body as the grounding completes, marking the difference between distracted wakefulness and deliberate presence. Keep the grounding sequence compact. Its value lies in clarity and repeatability rather than in length. Once the anchor is stable, transition into the scripting phase with confidence that the nervous system is prepared to receive and encode new patterns. Introduce one primary script and an optional secondary line for nuance, speaking each phrase slowly while feeling its bodily correlates, and allow sensory detail to seed the rehearsal in memory. Repeat each line with gentle emphasis, 3 to 5 times, maintaining present tense and somatic connection, so the subconscious experiences the phrase as a believable event rather than a wish. Use tempo and tonal variation in inner speech to highlight the parts of the phrase that carry the most emotional charge, deepening the encoding without needing extra words. If a secondary line is used, make it a small supporting sentence that clarifies behavior or sensation, such as, "Hands move with calm competence," to add actionable texture to a confident script. Keep language concise and measurable, so the subconscious has something specific to test and replicate. This focused scripting phase is the energetic core of the 5-minute practice, where change is seeded through clear, embodied repetition. Conclude with 2 slow breaths and a brief visualization of a small, believable scene that confirms the script's reality, letting sensory detail fade into a quiet assurance rather than clinging to fantasy. Use a single phrase of gratitude or calm recognition to signal closure to the subconscious, acknowledging the rehearsal and marking the session as complete, so the mind can file the experience as practiced learning. Take one mindful movement afterwards, rolling the shoulders, standing, or lifting a cup, so the body records a practical transition from practice to life. Carry the anchor lightly into the next minutes, ready to be invoked in moments of decision or challenge without fanatic attachment. Keep the close brief and dignified. This preserves the ritual's consistency across days and seasons. The integration marks the moment when inner rehearsal becomes lived possibility rather than mere imagination. If mornings are rushed, Adapt the 5-minute practice into micro versions, 1 breath and a single sentence while teeth are brushed, or a 30-second anchor touch while waiting for coffee, ensuring that reinforcement continues despite time constraints. Prioritize consistency over perfection. A brief, well-executed micro-rehearsal daily is far more effective than a long, inconsistent practice. Keep a short set of backup anchors, gesture, breath, or phrase that are portable and context-appropriate for varied routines, so the programming remains accessible when travel or work schedules shift. Notice how the subconscious prefers rhythmic regularity more than elaborate ceremony, so these adaptations maintain powerful effects. Honor mornings that allow the full 5-minute ritual, but treat micro-practices as legitimate and effective alternatives rather than compromises. The ultimate aim is a daily commitment to rehearsal, however expressed, so identity and behavior realign gradually and surely. Here are simple, high-impact abundance lines crafted for immediate somatic acceptance. Choose one that feels believable and pair it with the anchor examples. Include money arrives with ease for necessary choices, and small steady inflows support creative life. Repeat the chosen line slowly, 3 to 5 times in the 5-minute rehearsal, and then visualize a brief scene that demonstrates it, such as receiving a thoughtful payment or making a calm purchase without anxiety. If the line feels too large, pare it down into an even smaller, more credible sentence to preserve believability and allow the subconscious to accept the truth incrementally. Track any micro-evidence that appears throughout the day and feed that evidence back into the script to expand its reach over time. Rotate through a small library of 2 to 4 lines to prevent habituation while maintaining consistent practice. Select phrases that map directly onto everyday sensations and choices so the new messages become functional rather than abstract.
Sample health lines are concise and restorative. Cells repair with calm efficiency, and energy flows steadily through each days are examples that pair well with hydration and breath-based micro-behaviors. Repeat one line during a 5-minute session and anchor it with a felt somatic cue, imagining a small cellular vignette such as warmth and slow rhythmic circulation, making the repair credible and sensory. If a line generates skepticism, simplify it into a micro-proposition that the body can test within a few days, like rest supports steady repair tonight, then observe sleep and energy shifts as confirmation. Keep the language nurturing and non-judgmental, because the subconscious responds more effectively to welcoming instruction than to blunt demands. Rotate the health lines weekly to stimulate fresh neural growth and avoid stale repetition that the deep mind may begin to ignore. Use small, trackable behaviors to provide the feedback loop necessary for the subconscious to update its assumptions about healing. Confidence lines should emphasize presence and competence rather than outcome alone. Phrases such as "a calm, steady presence guides voice and action," and "hands move with clear, purposeful rhythm" anchor performance in reliable physical cues. Practice the line with paired micro-behaviors, like slow exhale before speaking, or a brief upright posture check, so the script is supported by body-based evidence. If a confidence line triggers self-criticism, dial it back to a micro-affirmation that the nervous system can accept, then scale upward slowly as micro-evidence accumulates. Repeat the line over consecutive mornings and use small social experiments during the day to translate rehearsal into validated skill. Rotate through a handful of lines that address posture, voice, and social boundary to strengthen a multi-dimensional identity shift. These concise lines become the scaffolding of an upgraded self-image when practiced with somatic precision.
Include integration phrases that close and stabilize the rehearsal, such as "this practice settles into steady action," Or, small daily acts create lasting change, spoken with gratitude and a sense of completion that signals closure to the subconscious. Use these phrases to mark the end of the 5-minute session, so the mind can catalog the rehearsal as a practice skill rather than an unfinished wish. Integration phrases also help the body shift back into daily mode, making it easier to carry the anchor quietly into ongoing tasks. Repeat the integration line once at the end of the practice and allow the physical anchor to remain lightly engaged for the next few moments. Over time, these closure cues become triggers for the nervous system to stabilize and record the lesson of the rehearsal. Consistent use of integration phrases helps ensure practices stick and are recognized by the subconscious as meaningful training sequences. Personalize the script library by selecting lines that feel culturally and personally resonant, adapting phrasing to match language patterns that already carry authority in the listener's life rather than forcing unfamiliar cadences. Test each customized line for believability and somatic resonance, adjusting words and pacing until the phrase lands with a subtle nod in the body rather than raising alarms. Keep a short list of 3 go-to lines to prevent overwhelm and to ensure that daily practice remains simple and consistent. Use the ledger of micro-evidence to inform which lines should be scaled up or refined, allowing actual experience to shape the script evolution. Remember that personalization does not mean complexity. It means selecting a small set of phrases that fit the listener's lived reality and can be practiced simply and reliably. This tailoring increases adherence and the speed at which the subconscious incorporates the new messages.
Understand that habit formation in the subconscious relies on repetition, context cues, and emotional payoff, forming neural patterns that automate behavior so attention can be freed for creative tasks. Frequent, short practices anchor more reliably than occasional long sessions because the brain consolidates new pathways by repeated activation across contexts. Use morning consistency to establish the primary context and then deploy micro-cues throughout the day, gestures, phrases, or environmental triggers that reactivate the script and accelerate consolidation. Design the schedule and environment to reduce decision fatigue, placing anchors and reminders in plain sight so the nervous system cannot ignore them. Celebrate small wins and track them as motivating feedback because positive reinforcement strengthens the habit loop and encourages continued repetition. This methodical habit architecture transforms deliberate practice into automatic competence over weeks and months.
Choose contextual triggers that naturally fit daily routines, waking, teeth brushing, or pouring morning water, so retrieval of the script becomes effortless and aligned with existing patterns. Attach the anchor or a single phrase to these triggers so the subconscious learns to execute the rehearsal with minimal cognitive overhead. Vary the triggers slightly to build robustness, using both time-based and action-based cues so the script is available in different environments and states of arousal. Monitor which triggers produce the most reliable engagement and lean into them while keeping a secondary set as backups for travel or change. The aim is to create a web of cues that collectively ensure the rehearsal is rarely missed. When triggers are well designed, habituation occurs faster and with less resistance. Implement micro-reward systems that provide immediate but healthy reinforcement for practice completion, such as marking a tick on a small chart, savoring a single appreciative breath, or noting a small evidence item in the ledger. These immediate rewards create a positive emotional association with the practice, encouraging repetition and strengthening the habit loop. Keep rewards modest and consistent to avoid creating dependency on external validation. The goal is to reinforce intrinsic motivation through tiny, reliable pleasures. Use the evidence ledger as a secondary reward structure. Every recorded piece of micro-evidence serves as real-world validation for the practice. Over time, the internal satisfaction of aligned action becomes the primary reward, making external tokens less necessary. Thoughtful reward design converts the mechanical act of practice into a pleasant, reinforced ritual. Track progress with simplicity. A single line in a notebook, a daily digital note, or a mental tally of 3 micro-evidences keeps momentum visible and prevents discouragement during quiet phases of change. Focus tracking on observable outcomes and experiences rather than vague judgments, celebrating specific moments that confirm script effects, an easier payment, a restful night, or a calm conversation. Review the ledger weekly to notice patterns and to refine scripts, scaling language or behaviors as confidence and evidence grow. Use the tracking process as an opportunity for compassionate calibration rather than self-critique, adjusting expectations according to actual data. Over months, this archive becomes a powerful testament to change, one that the subconscious can recall when skepticism threatens to undermine progress. The habit of tracking is itself a reinforcing practice that helps embed new identity trajectories. Recognize that true habituation unfolds over months and sometimes years, shaped by consistent rehearsal, supportive environments, and thoughtful scaling that honors the nervous system's pace. Maintain humility about timelines and celebrate the gradual accumulation of new patterns as they concretely alter daily choices and emotional tone. Reinforce core scripts seasonally, returning to foundational lines to refresh and strengthen them as life contexts shift. Allow the practice to evolve with changing priorities while preserving the central architecture anchor, simple phrase, somatic coupling, and evidence tracking that ensures reliable integration. When habituation matures, the new scripts move from deliberate practice into effortless tendency, turning the life into a living expression of the rehearsed intentions. This patient process yields the most enduring transformations, rooted in steady application rather than dramatic swings.
Recognize that neuroplasticity is the biological mechanism through which repeated experiences reshape neural pathways, and that brief, frequent practices effectively engage this mechanism by repeatedly activating target circuits. Each rehearsal strengthens synaptic connections associated with the practice state, making activation more likely in future moments that call for similar responses. The 5-minute scripts exploit this principle by offering targeted, high-probability activations each morning that bias the nervous system toward desired patterns. Over time, these rehearsals reduce cognitive load by converting effortful choices into automatic tendencies, freeing mental bandwidth for creative and adaptive tasks. Research shows that consistency and emotional salience accelerate plastic changes, which is why embodiment and felt detail in scripting are essential. Understanding this science provides reassurance that small, daily acts have measurable biological impact. Emotional engagement enhances memory consolidation, meaning that scripts tied to felt sensation are encoded more firmly than purely cognitive statements, so the practice intentionally layers sensory detail with phrase to leverage this principle. The amygdala and hippocampus collaborate to prioritize emotionally salient experiences for long-term storage, making effective rehearsal a powerful tool for identity change. Use warmth, calm, and subtle pleasure as emotional tones in the script to ensure that the subconscious tags the rehearsal as valuable and worth keeping. Avoid high arousal stress states during practice, as these can bias encoding toward threat responses rather than growth-oriented patterns. Gentle positive affect optimizes consolidation and allows reprogramming to proceed without the side effects of chronic activation. This effective softening is central to the design of the 5-minute approach.
Expectation and belief systems influence outcomes through top-down modulation of physiology. What the mind confidently expects often influences hormonal rhythms and perceptual readiness in ways that support the expected state. The scripting practice intentionally cultivates credible expectation without forcing unrealistic belief, allowing the placebo-like power of expectation to become a helpful ally rather than a deceptive crutch. By testing and refining scripts for believability, the subconscious is given realistic expectancy that supports actual change in behavior and physiology. This is not about fanciful promises, but about creating a credible internal forecast that the body can follow. When expectation aligns with feasible action and observable feedback, it becomes a practical engine for accelerated learning and adaptation. The design intentionally harnesses these mechanisms to produce replicable, humane results.
Use quantum language as a metaphor for interconnectedness and potential rather than as literal microphysics. The metaphor offers poetic scaffolding to describe how information influences systems without confusing metaphor with mechanism. The useful nugget is that small informational inputs to a system, clear intentions, repeated practice, and sensory anchoring can bias probabilistic outcomes in favor of desired states, much like selecting initial conditions in any complex system. Avoid over-claiming causality. Scientific rigor matters, and the practice is best understood as a psychologically and neurologically grounded approach that borrows metaphors from quantum language to inspire awe and conceptual accessibility. This balanced framing preserves integrity while honoring the profound sense of possibility that the metaphor evokes. Use the metaphor to expand perspective, not to replace empirical explanation.
Acknowledge practical outcomes and limits honestly. These scripts reliably shift attention, habit, and perception, creating improved decision-making, emotional regulation, and measurable life changes. But they are not magic cures for every challenge and should be integrated with appropriate professional care when needed. Use the scripts as a complementary tool alongside healthy lifestyle practices, therapy, and medical guidance, where relevant, viewing them as part of a comprehensive strategy for well-being and growth. Track changes objectively and adapt practices based on evidence, maintaining a pragmatic stance toward transformation. The science encourages a humble curiosity about impact. Experiment, observe, and refine. This grounded approach ensures the practice remains effective, safe, and sustainable over time.
As the 5-minute rehearsal completes, take a moment to acknowledge the subtle shifts that occurred, allowing a brief inward inventory of sensations, images, and emotions that now feel different than when the practice began. Recognize these small differences as important evidence. The nervous system records them and will use them as scaffolding for future change, so treat them with gratitude rather than impatience. Breathe gently and let the anchor remain lightly accessible as a resource to be called upon through the day, knowing that this availability is often more important than dramatic change in a single session. Store the memory of the practice in a simple, reliable way. Write a one-line note, say a single word of recognition, or imagine the anchor as a bookmarked pause. This simple closure signals to the subconscious that the rehearsal is complete and filed, increasing the likelihood that it will be drawn upon automatically when needed. Leave the session with curiosity rather than judgment, prepared to observe small ripples and to adjust practice as life provides feedback. Implement a weekly review ritual to assess what is working. Spend 5 to 15 minutes reviewing the evidence ledger, noting patterns, surprises, and areas needing revision, so the practice evolves in response to lived experience. Use this review to adjust script phrasing, scale claims up or down, and choose primary lines for the coming week based on data rather than hope. Recognize when a line has matured and can be retired, or when a new line is required to address emerging priorities, keeping the library fresh and responsive. This reflective practice also serves as motivational anchor, reminding the subconscious of accumulated wins and reducing the power of intermittent setbacks. Make the weekly review a calm, curiosity-driven habit rather than a performance audit, preserving kindness and momentum. These small strategic pauses keep the program adaptive and evidence-aligned. When evidence supports expansion, scale scripts up, gradually expand language, add small behavioral challenges, and introduce slightly larger goals, always maintaining believability and nervous system safety as primary considerations. Use the anchor and micro behaviors to buffer expansions so the system feels supported rather than pressured, and track new evidence to confirm that scaling is healthy and effective. Introduce new habits in clusters rather than wholesale revolutions, allowing each increment to settle before the next addition. Maintain humility about timelines, honoring the biological rhythms that govern deep adaptation and avoiding the trap of expecting immediate transformation. Scaling with integrity ensures that growth is durable and nourishes rather than undermines well-being. This measured approach converts successful rehearsal into meaningful life shifts without unnecessary disruption.
Consider inviting gentle accountability and community into the practice through shared rituals, partner check-ins, or small groups that exchange micro-evidence and encouragement, supporting sustained adherence without external pressure. Choose companions who honor the process, provide compassionate feedback, and model consistent practice, since social reinforcement accelerates habit formation and enriches motivation. Use community selectively, keeping the core practice private and sacred, while allowing social structures to provide encouragement and data points. Avoid comparing personal timelines with others. The practice is inherently personal and context-dependent. When accountability is aligned with values and kindness, it amplifies momentum and adds a supportive social matrix for growth. Community becomes a nourishing context rather than a performance arena. Treat this work as an ongoing conversation with the deeper mind, not a one-time intervention, honoring how slow accumulation, curiosity, and compassionate calibration create the most sustainable transformation. Keep the 5-minute practice as a core daily appointment and adapt its content as the life evolves, allowing curiosity about outcomes to guide incremental refinements. Track evidence, celebrate small wins, and repair identity fractures with gentle, corrective scripts that reflect both compassion and ambition. Remember that transformation is both practical and poetic. It requires disciplined rehearsal and a willingness to be held by larger possibility, with the anchor of routine providing the gravity that keeps change grounded. Move forward with patience and devotion to the small acts of practice. They are the true engines of profound and lasting inner rewrite. The path unfolds, one mindful repetition at a time, and each repetition is a sacred step toward the life that matches the newly written script.